Okay, folks, we're going to get the next session going, so if you could return to your seats. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This is going to be a great conversation between two of our most entrepreneurial faculty. Dr. Jonathan Dordick is Vice President for the Office of Strategic Alliances and Translation, and he's an Institute Professor of Chemical and Biological Engineering, and Dr. Eric Ledet of the RPI classes of 1995 and 2003. He's the Director of the Severino Center for Technological Entrepreneurship and also a Professor of the Practice at the Lally School of Management. At my inauguration 3 years ago, I said that one of my aspirations for RPI was that we become as successful as possible in the translation of ideas and inventions on this campus out into the world. RPI has some important history points in this regard. RPI's 12th president, George Lowe, was truly prescient in understanding what universities needed to do in a changing climate for innovation. In 1979, he created the first university-based incubator to give RPI-spawned companies a successful start. Lowe said at the time, "I don't think that we can educate all of our students without having available to them the laboratory of an entrepreneurial company. I think that's an important part of the educational process because it's an important part of America." In 1983, he created the RPI Technology Park as a place for companies created in the incubator as they grow and need more space. And in 1999, RPI established the Severino Center for Technological Entrepreneurship, a central hub for the campus startup community and part of the Lally School of Management. Much has changed. Much has changed in how translation at a university happens, and we have decided that now is the time for RPI to invest in and strengthen the way we support translation across the spectrum, from licensing to companies or supporting the formation of a startup or a nonprofit. We are creating new programs that help our students, faculty, and staff in the process of translation. Our first step was to create the Office of Strategic Alliances and Translation, or what we call OSAT, to steer towards that goal. We've changed our intellectual property policies to make them much simpler and favorable for entrepreneurs, especially student entrepreneurs. We've also created RPI Ventures to offer non-dilutive funding for startups at all levels, grants for our faculty, and awards and prizes for our students. And we've already raised more than $10 million for this fund. The Severino Center also includes our Brain Trust Venture Advisor Network. We hope some of you will contribute your expertise to it, whether in patent law, financial accounting, marketing, or the fine art of pitching investors. We've moved our Severino Center from the Lally School into RPI Ventures to make this resource more readily available to faculty and students in all schools. And we've persuaded a successful entrepreneur educated at RPI, biomedical engineer Eric Ledet, to return here as the director of the Severino Center. RPI has also joined forces with Rensselaer County to create a new accelerator for tough tech startups in downtown Troy called Scale Rensselaer. We expect another great crop of startups to emerge from it. Now I'm going to ask our interviewers to join me on stage. Let me first introduce Dr. Jonathan Dordick, who joined the RPI faculty in 1998 as chair of the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering. Dr. Dordick has made foundational contributions to enzyme technology, microscale cell culture, engineering, drug discovery, human toxicology, and biomanufacturing. He's been elected to both the National Academy of Engineering and the National Academy of Inventors. Dr. Dordick has published over 460 papers and is an inventor or co-inventor on over 50 patents and patent applications. He also has co-founded several companies based on research conducted in his lab, which makes him the perfect person to steer RPI's Office of Strategic Alliances and Translation. John, thank you for taking the reins today. Please join me up on stage. John will be interviewing Dr. Eric Ledet, who earned his master's and doctoral degree in biomedical engineering at RPI. Dr. Ledet was a professor at RPI and Albany Medical College. He most recently served as Vice President of Research and Development at the Center for Disability Services. He also founded 4 companies in the Capital Region over the last 30 years, including Revivo Medical, a medical devices company. We are so delighted to have him back as the new director of our Severino Center for Technological Entrepreneurship and to have him here to talk about entrepreneurship. Eric, can you please join us on stage? I hope you enjoy the conversation, and take it over, John.
Thanks very much, Marty. Everybody can hear me? Okay. And welcome to this, probably the first one of these that I can remember we're doing on entrepreneurship, and especially because we have an alum that, like you, knows a lot about RPI and the history of RPI, and be interesting to see what he has to say to the questions I'm going to ask. But let me just start, as Marty said, we need to translate what we do here at the university into the real world. Our students and faculty are natural-born discoverers and problem solvers, as you know. You know that obviously firsthand because you are one. And it's been the case for 200 years now. Our students and faculty have spawned a large number of successful companies. We sit as one of the top universities in receiving patents, even though we're smaller than most of the others on the list above us. And we were the first, as Marty said, first university with a technological incubator as well as a tech park. So I remember a famous line actually from The Social Network, many of you may know that movie, where the president of Harvard said that Harvard undergraduates believe that inventing a job is better than finding a job. Now, I'm not quite sure Harvard does that particularly well, but at RPI, we need to do better, like most institutions, to do exactly that, particularly given the climate we're in. So what Eric is doing, and what our Office of Strategic Alliances and Translation is doing, is, and particularly with the RPI Ventures component, is to move the needle to bring RPI back to its roots as a technological juggernaut that will excite our current students as well as our prospective students to invent their future. And so with this as a framework, let's get started, Eric. So Eric, you grew up in Arizona and getting your BS degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Arizona. And you came a long way, obviously, to come here to RPI, so as a graduate student. So what was your transition like?
Yeah, so it was a big step, big move across the country. Came from a big state university to a small private school that really focuses on engineering. I was a little nervous about whether I would be prepared academically. I came in for graduate school with a big class, a big cohort, and the class was from all over the US, all different backgrounds. And so actually academically, I fit in very well. My preparation was good, and our class, we formed a cohort, friendships, pretty quickly. And I think actually for me, the bigger challenge was moving from Southern Arizona to upstate New York, right? The climate, the culture, things like that, it was different. In fact, I remember when I got here, it wasn't long before several of my friends realized I showed up here at age 23 and I didn't know how to ice skate. And that was just appalling, right? You can't beat our, so one of my, now a friend of 30 years, Sean Carroll, an alum who grew up in Maine, he was not okay with that, so he took it upon himself to teach me how to ice skate. And let's just say I never went home from an exam in a class with a bruise on my backside, but the ice skating, that was like a lot harder than classes were. So once I started to get the hang of that, immediately the conversation turned to intramural hockey. And all the alums here, right, everybody knows, that's serious business here at RPI, very competitive. And so there's like the A division or A league or whatever it is that's the most competitive, and then there's B, and so then I think we registered for like the Q league, or something like that. And so I borrowed a bunch of really stinky gear from some other guy, and I get out there on the ice for my first hockey game, and I'm like, wow, this feels pretty cool. I got all this stuff on, and one of the things that I figured out is that if you, with the stick in your hand, if you keep it down on the ice, right, then I've got 3 points of contact, 2 skates and the stick, and I was much less likely to fall over. And so that earned me my nickname in graduate school, which was Tripod. So needless to say, my hockey career was pretty short, but the transition to RPI was really good.
Well, I grew up in LA, so we didn't have a whole lot of ice. We didn't have a whole lot of water either. But anyway, I remember I played street hockey, and that was great until a car ran over the net. So anyway, okay, so a little more serious. So you you really didn't take a very traditional path forward. You came, you got your master's degree, and then you went, instead of for a PhD, you went out and got a job. And then you came back and finished fully your PhD.
Yeah.
So why did you do that? What drove you to that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. So when I started graduate school here, I was doing research with one of the research centers here, Center for Advanced Technology in Automation, Robotics, and Manufacturing. And the research that I worked on for my master's was funded by NASA, and it was an anthropomorphic robotic hand. So that's a robot hand that is intended to mimic the human hand, 4 fingers and a thumb. And it was a very high-profile project. It looked very, like Terminator-like. And so there were mechanical engineers working on it, electrical engineers, computer scientists, and then there was like this one lowly biomedical engineer, which was me. And what my job was to really study and quantify the kinematics and mechanics, so that the motion and the function of the human hand, so that we could replicate that with the robot. And so I got connected with an orthopedic surgeon, a hand surgeon at Albany Med. And his name is Rich Ewell. It turns out he was also an alum. And so I would go with him, and we would spend time together in the anatomy lab at Albany Med, or working with patients to try to characterize these things. And I developed a really good relationship with Rich. He had a very strong technical background in electronics and mechanics. And I remember I asked him one time, what is your engineering degree in from RPI? And he said, no, actually my degree is in biology, but all of my roommates over the years were engineers and I did all their homework. And so he always felt that he should get an honorary degree in engineering from RPI, because and fast forward 30 some years, and he is actually now chief of orthopedic surgery at Albany Med. So while we were working on this, we developed a really good relationship. And at one point, as I was nearing the end of my master's, he started talking to me saying that orthopedic surgery at Albany Med wanted to put together a research program, which they didn't have. And he would say, hey, we're interested in doing this. Is this the kind of thing a biomedical engineer could do? And I had no idea what he was talking about, and I said, yes, right? And so around the time that I was finishing up my master's, NASA actually pulled the funding on the project. And so it was unclear to me exactly what direction I was going to go. And at the same time, Albany Med launched this orthopedic research program. I got involved, ultimately went to work full-time for Albany Med, became a member of the faculty at Albany Med, and while I was still a student at RPI, worked full-time at Albany Med for 9 years, running the research program in orthopedics. And during that time, defined my PhD work, which is a collaboration between RPI and Albany Med, and did my PhD work part-time while I was working full-time at Albany Med. So, very much a non-traditional path, but that did help to launch my career, and ultimately my PhD work came out of that relationship as well.
Sounds great. So then you decided you're going to become a faculty member. You joined the faculty here in biomedical engineering. But you had an itch to become an entrepreneur at the same time. So how did that really work back then? What was it like to get a new venture started here as a faculty member while doing your research, while teaching? And what did your faculty peers think of that?
So a lot of questions there, right? So the short story is that when I was when I was working at Albany Med, a lot of the research that we were doing there was very translational. And what I mean by that is sort of on the spectrum of really basic science, foundational work at one end of the spectrum, and at the other end is translational. So the research we were doing was, the next step was going to be to go into the clinic, right? And to go out on the market. So we're working very closely with a lot of big orthopedic companies, Stryker, DePuy, which is Johnson & Johnson's orthopedic company, Medtronic, and so on. So while I was sort of the academic engineering guy, I was working with teams of product development engineers, working with people on those teams that were regulatory people, quality people, manufacturing people, sales and marketing. So I got to learn the product development process. Even though I was in academics, I got to learn that whole process. And after being at Albany Med for 9 years, the Department of Biomedical Engineering, where I'd done my graduate work, was looking to hire a faculty member who could do experimental research and had experience in those things. And so I ended up joining the faculty in 2004, taught courses in design, product development, commercialization of technology, among other things. And during that time, I did consulting work, first for some of those big companies, and then ultimately for some small to medium, and then I got involved doing some consulting work for startups. And so then, what happened was that it kind of got me into the startup world. The whole stigma of starting a company, that kind of went out the window, and then I was waiting for an opportunity. And I was doing some research at RPI. My research at RPI primarily revolved around orthopedic smart implants, right? So what a smart implant is if you take, for example, like a total hip replacement, that implant normally has therapeutic purpose, right? It goes in, it eliminates pain and restores function of the hip. A smart implant retains its therapeutic purpose, but also adds diagnostic capabilities. So it'll be able to collect data about what's going on inside the body, transmitting that outside the body, gaining information that you couldn't get any other way. The way that we did that at the time is you would take an existing implant and you would modify it. We would hollow out part of the implant, we would take sensors and put it in there, we would take electronics and shove them in there, we would take signal conditioning circuits and put them in there, and then you try to laser weld the thing back together. Very expensive, about $5,000 per individual implant. And then you're also really diminishing the quality of the implant in that. So we came up with a technology where we did this in a fundamentally different way. And all that cost $5,000 to do, we made our first functional prototypes of doing this a fundamentally different way, and the cost of materials was 40 cents. And the way that we did that, without getting into technical details, is basically if you have an antenna on the outside and you generate a radio frequency signal, if you look for a reflection back from the signal using our little technology that we put on the implants, the reflection was proportional to whatever we were trying to measure. And so it was a fundamentally different way of doing it. And again, $5,000 down to 40 cents. And so we thought, maybe there's some commercial potential, to this. Maybe we can do something. And so we decided we ended up obtaining the rights to the intellectual property, the patent from RPI, formed a company, and that was the first company that I launched. And John, it turns out starting a company is not so easy, as you well know. And from that experience, made like every possible mistake that we could make, learning along the way, the hard way for everything. And the one thing is that I was on the faculty at that time, I was teaching courses, and I made a point that every time that I made a mistake and learned from it, I would turn that into a case study, and that would then go into classes. And what was really hard for me, and I felt was missing, was really good mentorship. And so I felt that if I could take my experiences and use that to help mentor, even at that time, just in the classes that I was teaching, that I could make a difference that way.
Yeah.
So, and I, learned a lot from that. I've started 3 other companies since then, but that was the first experience, and and ultimately, we ended up licensing that technology. We developed it for a number of years, licensed it to another startup that had complementary technology, and it ultimately never made it to market for a number of different reasons. But a lot of lessons learned from that.
So RPI didn't get any money out of it either.
Not on that one, no.
Okay. Anyway, so, you did something quite amazing. You came to the faculty, you rose through the ranks, assistant, associate, full professor, and then you left after 17 years, which takes a lot of guts, because being a faculty member, you pretty much can control what you do, when you do it, for the most part. There are a few deans here. But then you decided you're going to leave. And what drove that decision? Why did you want to do that?
So definitely not an easy decision.
Yeah.
I was a tenured full professor at that time, and a lot of people think that it's crazy to leave a role like that. But I got it to a point where, I didn't become an engineer to write papers, right? I became an engineer to actually make stuff. And I became a biomedical engineer to make stuff that could help people. And at that time, the most recent company that I had started that Marty mentioned, Revivo Medical, that's a spine implant company for people with low back and neck pain. We got to a point where we were at a very critical period. And so I decided to take on a major role in the company, serve as chief operating officer during a very operationally intense period, and to give up my role as a faculty member. And I also worked with a not-for-profit, the Center for Disability Services in our region, to set up a medical devices incubator to help other people incubate their ideas. And at that time, Reviva, we were getting ready, so again, it's spinal implants, we were getting ready to start a first human use clinical trial for the technology that we had developed. And so it was setting up manufacturing and setting up a quality system and working with the FDA directly for the regulatory parts, and then manufacturing and getting inventory together, and then hiring field reps to help us, then training surgeons and bringing on hospitals for the clinical trial. It was a very intense period. I learned an incredible amount. It gave me a different level of understanding of what an entrepreneur is by doing that full time. And again, all of the challenges with doing that. So it was not an easy decision to leave, but I think it was the right one as far as the next step in my career for continuing to develop that technology. And by the way, I'm happy to report that as of last week, we enrolled the final patient in the clinical trial. So we're moving along with that as well.
Oh, that's great.
And so far, everything is good. Yeah, I'm going to just do that. Okay.
You know, it's hard in many cases for people to understand the complexity when you're dealing with a highly regulated environment, right? Whether it's pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and so forth. And so much has to go forward before you can even bring it to the FDA. We'll assume there's still an FDA. And even after that, you have the clinical trials, the complexity there, and then you could be on the market, and then it's business. It's complicated, and there's no guarantee. It's all or nothing. So that makes it tough. So after 3 years away, you decided to come back. Now, I know who hired you. Why did you accept my offer?
So I left in 2021. I knew that I was going to miss the teaching. I really enjoyed that part of my job, being a professor, and so I stayed engaged with that. I did some teaching and was involved in a number of student programs as well. The one thing I have to say that I really didn't appreciate when I left was how much I would miss the intellectual environment of being, on this campus, being at a university every single day. And that was not just in the lab, in the classroom, but I mean, literally like, in the hallway conversations. It was very intellectually stimulating to be able to go to seminars on all different topics, all the time. And then I watched as a new president came in. And when I heard that Marty Schmidt was going to be coming to RPI, I did a little diligence on his background and saw not only when he was at MIT did he support entrepreneurial activities, but he also was engaged as an entrepreneur himself. And then I further learned when he started at RPI that he commissioned, I think it was 4 different task forces to go out and get intel on where there were needs to be filled. And one of those was in entrepreneurship, tech transfer, translation. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Maybe that is telling about the direction that RPI is going to go. And then I learned that OSAT, Office of Strategic Alliances and Translation, was formed, and the brilliant John Dordick was going to be running that. And it really piqued my curiosity to see what direction RPI was going to go with this. And then when I learned that Severino Center was going to be elevated to a resource for the entire campus community, that really got my attention. And so when there was an opportunity to come back in this role, I felt like it was the culmination of all of my experiences, my love for teaching and working with students, my entrepreneurship background, my understanding the perspective of the faculty. And I felt like not only was this a really good opportunity for me, but it felt like a really good opportunity for RPI. And I thought, you know what, if I can come into this role and be a mentor for those students and faculty members that I didn't have when I was going through this process, making every mistake possible, I thought I could get a lot of fulfillment out of that, and maybe we can make a big difference. So with the support of the administration, it's been a year now since I came back, and it's been fantastic. My wife says I come home every day and I look exhausted, but I have a smile on my face. So, that works.
Well, I'm exhausted, but I don't know if I have a smile on my face. No, yes, Marty, I do. So, you know, I had mentioned at the beginning about inventing, a job. And when I was finishing my Ph.D. in biochemical engineering, you know, most of the students, when they graduated, they went to a big company. You know, if it's biochemical engineering, you know, Dow, DuPont, you have the petrochemical companies, and a little bit here and there. Some went and became physicians, some went and became attorneys, sued some of their colleagues. And my son's an attorney, I have to be careful. You know, today, I think it's fundamentally changing, and actually, I think significantly for the better. We have far more small, medium-sized companies. They're really driving a lot of the hiring. In fact, they're driving a lot of the technology development coming out of universities. So my question here is, particularly with respect to what you do, what Severino is doing, RPI Ventures, what is it that we do to support our students' competitiveness to join such companies, and even ideally, to even start thinking about starting companies?
Yeah, and I think one of the great things about RPI is that if you graduate here and you're an engineer, you can have a fantastic foundation in engineering. If you're a scientist, you have a fantastic foundation in science. If you're in the management school, you're going to be fantastic at that, right? And I think what I feel like our role is, and all the work that we're doing, is to try to prepare those engineers to also understand the business side of things, the finance side of things, the marketing side of things, the identifying problems that really need to be solved kind of things, which is probably, in my opinion, the most important piece of all of this. And so those students should be very well prepared to go to work for those big companies with whatever background they have. But working for a small to medium company or starting your own company, you know, you have to wear multiple hats. And you have to understand the perspective and the effect that everything that you do has on the business when it's a small or medium-sized or startup. And so I think what we're really working to do is to give the students that perspective so that they have a choice. If they want to go work for GE, IBM, whoever it is, they can do that and they're prepared. If they want to go and start their own company and be a solopreneur or whatever, they have the skills, at least maybe the foundation of those skills, some experience, maybe even just some awareness on what it takes to do that. So I think what we're doing is we're giving them the ability to have those options.
Great. So Marty mentioned, you know, a new IP policy that we have, and just a little background. In the past, when students, particularly undergraduates, did some work, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in a dorm, doesn't matter. In a way, it was, they had to convince the university that the university did not own it. And so we took a very different approach. Just about a year ago, we decided, you know, why don't we do it where, in this case, the default is with the student, particularly undergraduates. Now, if you're doing sponsored research, pretty grad students, the faculty, you know, that doesn't really change anything. It's still the way it was. But as an undergrad, wherever you are, there's almost no way that the university can claim an ownership. And so that's how we fundamentally changed it, to allow the students the opportunity to explore what they're thinking of inventing, what they may have invented. We have an express license agreement that ideally will make it simple for them, because first question is, oh, I own my, they realize, oh, I can own my IP. The second one is, oh, it costs a lot of money to do a patent if we have to do patenting. So we make things easy for them. So how has that already been changing what you see with the students coming forward with some ideas about starting their own company?
Well, I think that the new patent policy, which is as of, if I remember correctly, February of this year, right? And it's as John said, it's basically defaults to creator-owned inventions, right? And I think that the impact of that is huge. I think most important is that it sends a message. And I think it sends a message to incoming students, to prospective students. And it says, we want inventive people here. And I think it sends a message to current students, and it says, we want you to take the intelligence, the skills that you have, the drive, the motivation that you came in with, and we want to channel that towards inventions. We want to support you to legitimately practice the mantra of this university and change the world, right? So I think fundamentally it's a message thing first. And that policy that we have now is among the most favorable in the United States. And then of course the second thing that it does for inventors that we do have here, it makes it much easier for them to explore the path of entrepreneurship. I actually think, though you brought this up, we have a new express license agreement. And this is the first time in the Institute's history that we have this. And what this means is that any intellectual property that the Institute owns can be licensed back to the inventor, and the terms of that licensing agreement are incredibly favorable for the inventor. In fact, and I know you know this, we benchmarked that off of 30 different universities, and we have the most favorable terms. And so if I'm a student here or I'm a faculty member, I submit to you, it almost doesn't matter who owns the intellectual property, because that licensing agreement makes it very easy for someone to come in and license it and then take it and run with it. So I think these are huge, huge foundational changes for the Institute.
I will say though, because we don't want to give things away, is that it's favorable particularly early, because money is expensive early. But then if the company succeeds, RPI will succeed and do well. And that's really the whole point. And I think that's a fundamental shift from before, where you ask for all these things paid up front at a time when there's no money to pay it. So I think that's a key point. All right, and by the way, we have so many people here that probably thought that the IP policy was not ideal. Go out, tell people that it's fundamentally changed. And this is a great opportunity for RPI and for what comes out of RPI. So, all right, let's talk about the Severino Center. And, you know, I think clearly your fellow alumni would like to know what's been going on, what changes have you made to entrepreneurship here, and where are you going to be going with this?
We've been busy.
Yeah.
It's been a busy year.
I know you're busy because you're never answering anything I ask.
We've been working on a lot. Our philosophy for this has been to put together resources and then to go out and promote them. And the key here, we believe, is engagement, right? If you sort of think of all of the inventions, and those will sort of self-select down to the ones that are very viable. And so it's all about engagement, about feeding the top of the funnel and then letting the quality ones come out the bottom of the funnel. So we've put together resources to help support that. So in addition to the Severino Center team, we've created a new venture advisor team. We call them the Adventure team. This is, in the past, might have been called an Entrepreneurs in Residence. In the post-COVID era, we thought that the in-residence part was not as important. So we have the right people, even though they're not all geographically located right here. So we've created a team of venture advisors, very experienced entrepreneurs. We now have what we call the Legal Alliance. So we have partnerships with 2 different law firms and with the Albany Law School to provide pro bono legal advice to campus-based teams. We have 2 organizations focused on engagement. One is the Flying Pig Society. Notice I wore my Flying Pig socks today, so I've got those on. The Flying Pig Society is all about engagement. It's about getting students involved, faculty members involved, workshops and seminars. The workshops to help teach skills that would be helpful for entrepreneurs. The seminars, we get interesting people to come in, and I would love to get some of our interesting alums to come in, and we have them share their stories, their successes, their failures, and their wins and losses. We call those seminars, Flying Pig Society, right? We call the seminars pigtails. All right. And we do those about once a month during the academic year, and the students get really excited about it. We also have Startup Tech Valley, which existed before, closed down during COVID. We've done a reboot of Startup Tech Valley. That's a regional event where we bring typically 4 startups in to pitch. That typically is in downtown Troy, not on campus. We have created, and I think this one, I'd love to get more engagement here. We've created what we call the RPI Brain Trust. And the intent of the RPI Brain Trust is to be a network of industry professionals. And we're asking people, if you're willing to give 1 to 2 hours per month of your time, knowing that most months it'll probably be 0, We want to build out a network so that when a startup comes and if they have a question about accounting, we want to be able to hook them up with an accountant. If they have a question about nanoscale manufacturing, we want to have an expert in the network that can help them with that. So we're building out the brain trust, and I'm going to put up a QR code in a minute where we'll talk more about this. We also, with an alum who I think is in the room, John Wesson, who's in the 50-year club, we're creating the RPI Innovator Network, and we're looking at having the inaugural event at some point over the next couple months. And if you are an innovator, whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, whether you're a creator, an artist, whatever it is, if you are an innovator and you'd be amenable to talking with students or being an advisor for students or being on the advisory board for a startup, we would love to get some engagement in that as well. RPI, as Marty said, had the first incubator in the United States on a university, 1979. The incubator program closed down in 2010. We brought it back. In 2025, this spring, we launched it. We ran a cohort in the spring, we run one in the summer, and we just started another one in the fall. We've had 73 applications for the incubator program just in the first year. Innovation is alive and well. Yeah. Innovation is alive and well at RPI. Just a couple of other things that are new, because the list is long. Like I said, we've been busy. We've created the RVIP program, Rensselaer Venture Internship Prize Program. We have a lot of students who are interested in doing internships with startups. We know there are a lot of RPI affiliated startups that would love to have interns. No startup wants to use their coveted cash to pay for an intern. So we pay, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make that an opportunity not just for the students, but also for RPI startups to help on both sides of that. And we have founders fellowships as well. If you're an RPI student, undergraduate, graduate student, or even faculty member, you want to start your own company, we provide summer funding so that you can work for yourself to start your own company. In addition to that, we have a bunch of competitions, sort of some of the traditional student business plan competitions, and several other ones that we're creating to facilitate engagement and to encourage and entice RPI students to take that leap into entrepreneurship. And then, of course, we've been out fundraising as well. We have the Catalyst Fund, which is a pre-venture fund. It's really what it is a non-dilutional fund. So this is prizes, awards, launch money, things like that, to really help foster people to get engaged in this. So I'm sure there's like 10 other things that I'm forgetting right now, but there's a lot of stuff.
And that pre-venture, the Catalyst Fund, was really kick-started by a large gift by Ajit Prabhu, who actually did his master's degree in biomedical engineering.
Yes.
Although what he does now is unrelated to biomedical engineering. So just as we kind of conclude some of this, I want your perspective on this. We talk about an entrepreneurial journey where we have students at all levels, faculty, researchers on campus, and so forth. And they can start with some ideas, just being able to see if there's something exciting about what they're doing. Are they solving a problem that no one else has solved? Have they discovered something unique? They can start a company, but we don't want them to start a company right away because it takes a huge amount of effort and it dilutes from actually getting the things done that you need to get done to demonstrate that you can start a company. That's where the pre-venture stuff comes in. Then they can start a company and they can go into our accelerator. So as Marty mentioned, we're developing a downtown Troy accelerator, about 12,000 square feet, right in town. We are wrapping up the designs and so forth. It's a tough tech accelerator. So if you want to sit by a computer, for example, it's not going to be good enough. If you want to do that connected to a laboratory, wet or dry lab, that's where we can provide opportunities for you. Now that's as you start a company. We have the tech park, which is the first tech park in the nation, but still not as developed as I think we could make it. And so there's that pathway. If they stay in the region, they don't have to, but if they do, they have that opportunity, and then they go hopefully grow beyond that. So how do you think what you're doing now kind of feeds right into that?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I absolutely forgot about the accelerator, which is very exciting, and it's a regional resource, not just for the campus community, but to bring the region together. And what's really important about what you said, when we bring startups, or sometimes they're pre-venture, they're teams, into the incubator program, we tell them the second best outcome that can happen in the incubator is that you kill your idea quickly. You kill it now, right? Because what you don't want to do is to put in all of that time and energy and then kill it later on. And I know from experience that's not a good thing to do. And so, literally on the first day, I was talking with our provost last night about this. Literally on the first day, we tell the students, failure is an option if you learn from that failure. And it's fail and fail quickly. And so I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide wraparound services all the way from idea, through exploration, through launch, and then ultimately to scale up and commercialization. Incubator, we'll have a new program in the spring in the middle that we'll call the Activator program, and then we'll have the Accelerator, and then ultimately graduate to the Tech Park, if you will. So a whole spectrum, the entire thing, from dorm room discovery to commercialization.
So last thing, you have all these people here. You've already said a little bit about what you're looking to do and where they may be engaged, but even more specifically, what can our alumni do to help you and also benefit the alumni as a whole?
Yeah, and I think I've been going around to classrooms, and I have a little 10-minute thing that I'm asking faculty members to let me get in and steal 10 minutes of class time. And the title of that little teaser, that little intro is, "Now is a great time to be a student innovator at RPI." And I absolutely believe that that is the truth. And everything that we're doing, I think, aligns with the 3 pillars that Marty was talking about before, about enrollment and retention, research, and alumni engagement, right? We're trying to support all of those things. I think as alumni, right, and I have a QR code, I don't know if we can get the QR code up, but as alumni, what is most valuable, and I think where we have a huge asset in the alumni base, is in networking, in advising, in mentorship, in coaching, right? When we have an event where we have students that are pitching, I would love to get the alumni community to come in, to talk with those students, to say, hey, I know somebody who might be interested in being a mentor. I know somebody who might be interested in being an investor. And so we're looking for people who might be willing to share their experiences through the Innovator Network. If you're willing to actually roll up your sleeves and spend an hour or 2 a month, again, at most, helping to answer some questions, doing some advising and coaching, the Brain Trust. We'd love to get more people engaged in the Brain Trust. If you live regionally and we have a Startup Tech Valley event, come and join the community. Talk to students, talk to faculty who are founders, get engaged in the network. We'd also love to have suggestions, right? For those of you who are experienced innovators, whether that's an entrepreneur or any other type of innovation, what else can we be doing? How can we help the current campus community to elevate this and move it forward? And obviously funding helps as well. Donations are very much appreciated. But I think really what we're doing here, the experience, the wisdom that our alumni base holds, and if people are willing to share that, I think that can make a huge difference and can really put RPI in a position where we are the university of innovation relative to our peers. And I think now is an incredible time to do that.
Great. Thanks very much. Eric, I don't know if we have an ability to do the questions, but if we do not, you're going to be around, easily accessible. You can see with the QR code, be able to access Eric, access OSAT. It's osat.rpi.edu, so you can go right in there and see what it is we're doing. And I think we're all going to be looking forward, I certainly am, looking forward to all the great successes that Severino has, that RPI Ventures has, and that RPI as a whole has in entrepreneurship. So thanks very much.
Thank you.